Hello and welcome to the Obsessed with Real Estate show. I am your host, Alana George, and I am obsessed with real estate. Today, I have a great guest for you, Jack Aduwo with Kendu Bay Properties, and he shares with us a bunch of information on how he was able to scale his single-family portfolio, how and why he jumped into multifamily, and what he learned. His first two, here's a hint, his first two attempts were not successful. So you can hear what went down with that, what he learned, and where he's at now. We also deep dive into what he looks for in a property manager for his 100 plus unit complexes. It's really interesting and not something that I've heard before. This list he gives us, I'm really excited to share that with you. Before we jump into the interview, if you are local to the San Jose area, I am now co-running the Multifamily Masters San Jose chapter, and I'm super excited about it with my partner, Elsa Nguyen. And we have monthly events. So we have a meetup in person coming up. So check it out. I'll have a link to that on the show links. And if you just want to check out what Multifamily Masters MFM is, you'll be able to look at that as well. So let's hop into the show. Great. Welcome, Jack Aduwo. Oh, did I say that
Thank
right
you.
this time?
You got it. You got it.
Jack Aduwo with Kendu Bay Properties. Thank you so much
Yes.
for being on the Obsessed with Real Estate show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you about real estate. I love talking about real estate. So, talk about real estate, I'm all in, Yes, tell me more and I'll tell you more, right?
Yeah, sometimes I will admit, like, I'm a decently social person, not to go on a tangent, but I will have trouble sometimes coming up with other topics, especially if I'm like, in work mode and podcast mode. And then I go to like a family party and I'm like, who am I? Do I have do I do anything else? Like, what can I talk about? So I'm happy that you're here and that you're just obsessed. Welcome, welcome.
Absolutely.
You and I met through the Warrior program. Actually, prior to me joining Radcliffe's Warrior program, I did meet you.
Oh, I did not know you joined. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So when we met in Orlando, you had not yet joined, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That was December 2021. And I think we met in Orlando. You don't have to remember because I'm pretty sure it was at the bar and you like to have a lot of fun. Me, right? So if you didn't remember, that's okay. But then we crossed paths in Denver as well.
Yes. Yeah. And then we reconnected, I believe, on Facebook.
Yeah. And you know what? I've been getting
Facebook.
Your emails. You did a really great job of, taking my contact information and putting it in your database. So I was getting your emails and I saw this guy's doing deals. He's sending stuff. Right. So obviously you're somebody to connect with, right?
Thank you.
You're active. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain and see, how did you become successful? So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your background before you got to real estate investing and what brought you ultimately to investing.
Yes. So my background is I graduated actually out of college with computer science and minor in math in 2009. And as you can notice, 2009 was the last major recession, right? So right out of college, we moved from LA to Boise, came to Boise as an IT developer, a software developer with HP. They hired me right out of college to come and work actually in Boise. The funny thing is when we moved to Boise, our plan was, okay, we're just going to live in Boise for a couple months and then, move back to LA because all we knew was LA and Boise, but I mean Boise, Idaho, because not everybody knows Boise, but at least they know Idaho. So Boise, Idaho. And, we came here, settled in, this 09, and for several, like coming from LA to Boise at that time, real estate was very expensive in LA, especially for a fresh college student. And then we moved to Boise and we could afford anything. And we can afford a really nice home. We don't have to have a lot of money. It was very cheap and affordable. And, we bought our first single family. And while we were trying to buy for single family, we put several offers. One of the offers we really wanted, we really loved the house, rejected our offer. It was a short sale. So they rejected our offer. We ended up finding another house, which is the house we still live in until today, as of today. But, after we got our house, that house that had rejected our offer came back on market and for even lower price. And it was like $80,000, like even lower than what we had originally offered. Like, wait a minute.
Wow.
Because Boise did not bottom out until like 2011. So 2009, it was
Oh.
going down, but still highly priced by local.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're like, hey, why don't we just buy it and rent it out? And so we bought it, went to the property, we got a short sale. We put like 20% down, which like, I think 16K, give or take somewhere there. And the day we closed it, there was a tenant living on the house. The house was only about 5 years old. It was not old at
Wow.
all. And the tenant was paying about $900 per month, give or take. And our mortgage was coming to about $500. So day one, we're like, wait a minute, $400 net.
Yeah.
And all we had to do was put $16,000 down. After that, we're like, oh man, let's get more of this. So basically,
Let's do it again.
yes, let's do it again. So we were living very frugal life at that time, no kids, not a lot of expenses. We graduated out of college with no debt, and being in the IT, I was getting paid pretty well. And so basically, it's one of those kind of just seeing the opportunity and jumping into it. And so we bought on average kind of like between 2010 to basically 2013. If you average things out, almost like every quarter we were buying a house. If you average it out.
Wow.
Yes. And it was like, because the market kept going down, so
Yeah.
they didn't get cheaper. I think the
Yeah.
lowest I bought was probably 70 something thousand, like, about 70,000. Anyway, so that basically what kind of got us into the real estate. But during that time, I was still having my W-2 as an IT person. And I started as a developer, then I became a technical lead. And then I got a job off with another company based out of Salt Lake City. And so I moved to Salt Lake City, and I'd work for a company based out of the Salt Lake City Metro. And I worked there for about 7 years, started. And by the time I left, I was an IT manager over there. And basically, I retired from my IT job in 2021, around the same time we
Oh,
met,
wow.
December 2021. And that was
Yeah.
around the time I retired from IT. And I was like, I'm just going to do this full time.
That's great. Well, you
Yes.
were in a really great mood. So it's probably why I'm not having the W-2 anymore.
Yes.
I want to ask you, so you went on like a buying spree when the prices dropped. Did you know anyone prior to that was
Nobody.
investing? No.
No, I did not. And I'm still regretting up to now because I could have done. So it's funny. It's one of those, a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So the only reason why we stopped buying single family was because the lenders didn't want to lend us anymore because they were like, we were too risky. Because with us, we're just buying it and, on our own credit and just normal conventional financing, putting 20% down. And, at that time, I don't know where it is right now, at that time, after you bought
10?
4 houses, then what is it? The government, Fannie and Freddie rules changes, right? So you kind of like, they don't give you as much, support, so to speak, as they would between 1 to 4.
Yeah.
But then the moment you go beyond 10, now you're on your own, right? Because you no longer, you cannot get FHA loan, right? So any loan you get is a portfolio loan. I'm assuming it's still the same, but it's been years since I last bought a single family.
Yeah, the
but
last I heard it was the same. It was still the same.
okay. So and I later found out there were a lot of creative financing I could do. Like some of these homes were short sale that, I knew was selling it. If I can just approach was selling it, right? And
Yeah.
work out with them such that we do kind of like a sandwich or some kind of creative financing. I would have been able to buy way more, but I did not know anybody, and I just saw the opportunity and jump on it.
Right. So
Yes.
that's the wall you hit, was once they said, You're
Mhm.
at 10 properties. We're not going to give you any more of these loans,
Yes.
right? You'd have to do a
Mhm.
portfolio loan. Then you're like, okay, well, that's the ceiling. That's the wall.
There's a ceiling. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mhm.
Okay. So that you had that going for you. And was that enough? Okay. I have so many questions.
Yes.
So your first one was the one that you shared with us. And
Mhm.
it sounds like you learned like, hey, this is a great way to build passive income. Was there anything else that you learned either from that deal or from building that portfolio?
Well, with single family, it's kind of, is for the most part, it's plain simple. There's nothing creative.
Mhm.
Definitely learn a lot of,
Were you
fixing toilet
managing?
on my own and fixing
Yeah. Were you
installing
managing
my
them?
own microwaves. And I remember one of the lesson learned was I had a guy, a tenant call me, say the air conditioner is not working right. So I called the HVAC guy. The guy charged me like, I don't know, I think like $150. And it turned out the fuse is what went out. And it took him literally like, 15 minutes to fix it, and it's $150.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, I gotta figure it out. So next time that same problem I'm like, I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna try to replace it. And it worked. And
Wow.
so you'll be surprised at the number of things that those guys just gonna rip you off. And there's nothing you can do. When I live in Utah, one of my biggest frustration was a tenant would call me on a Monday about an issue that I know is not expensive to fix. But I can't drive from Salt Lake to Boise to fix it because it's not worth the cost and the time. So I would be paying
Yeah.
somebody that I know they're ripping me off, but there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Like,
That's funny.
but at least, I think it helped me a lot, especially as I progress in this business, like into multifamily. Because a lot of this thing, like I remember one of my maintenance guy on one of my properties, we're talking about things that need to be done. And they were like, hey, we need a vendor because we had storage garages and they have the opener is not working.
Mhm.
I'm like, you should be able to fix that because I know I can fix that on my own. Like, you're a maintenance guy.
That's not hard.
No, it's not hard. I mean, actually, when that's what you do day in, day out. I mean,
Yeah.
fixing,
Yeah.
installing the opener, like was a big deal. But when I was getting started, I was managing everything on my own. So basically being the first call. And when the tenant has this issue, they'll call me in. A lot of time I'll try to figure out thanks to YouTube and those stuff. And initially I was calling every time there's an issue, I'm calling somebody. But once you start realize that you're paying people for things that takes you
Mhm.
30 minutes to fix. Or back then I had more time in my hand, didn't have any kids or
Yeah.
anything. So, I would rather go spend 3 hours learning to do it because next time it won't take me 3 hours, but if I can spend 3 hours learning to do it, which means next time somebody doesn't rip me off to do the same repair. Or funny thing is, one of the things also that was happened was incinerator, right? So the garbage disposal, right?
Mhm.
On one of my properties had gone out. So, well, it didn't go out, it just jammed. And I remember somebody coming, plumber coming, and all he had to do is use the whatever it is
Snake.
to this. Yeah, no, not even snake. What's the right term? What's the right tool?
Plumber. I mean, the plunger.
No, no. So, oh gee.
That's the extent of my knowledge, so I can't help you.
So it's a special tool to just unjam the garbage disposal at the bottom part of it. It
Yeah.
took the guy like 10 seconds to fix the issue, and there you go, 75
Yeah.
bucks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? That's all it took? Yes. So you didn't get to learn a lot, by watching people do it. And next time, just do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Save the
Yeah.
money. Hmm.
I agree. My husband and I have that discussion all the time because we
Hmm.
have some rentals in Ohio, and
Yes.
I'll just hire somebody to do the things. Yes, they're overcharging. They know we're in
Yes.
California, but it's worth it to me because what are we going to do? Fly out there every
Yeah,
time?
exactly. Yeah, it's not what the cost
Yeah.
of
And
going
it
down there,
just
but
kills him because he's like,
yes,
I could do these things, but I'm not
it
there.
doesn't take that long.
Yeah. But I'm like, I know, but you're also not a handyman and you have your own
Yeah.
job. You have your own business here. So you can't be in two places. So it's funny that you say that. But then
Yes.
moving to Salt Lake, it kind of forced you, which kind of
Hmm.
like, I've heard helps with scaling when you aren't doing the work yourself, is it kind
Right.
of forces you to hire somebody else and not be the one
Hmm.
with the plunger. But so from there, because I know you kept investing,
Right.
is that when you pivoted to multifamily, or tell me about that shift?
Yeah, so it's kind of like what I alluded to earlier on. So, I think after we bought more than 10 houses, buying more houses was becoming challenging. So I started looking for other ways. I started exploring, can I buy a fourplex? And I remember talking to this broker guy, and they say that, oh, we only do 750K and above. That was the first time a mortgage broker that is, that alone, like they can only land 750K and above. And I'm like, tell me more. And then they're like, hey, it has to be at least 5 units above. And I started researching more into it and found that, oh, the loan is even better when you go above 5 units, because now all of a sudden it's a commercial. It's no longer
Yeah.
a residential. And so after that, I started looking for bigger assets. So
I just want to pause you just for a
mhm,
second for the listeners so we can back it up and just define that.
mhm,
That 1 to 4 units is a residential loan, and
yes,
5 and above, anything 5 and above, is a commercial loan. So if you're buying a 5 unit or a 500 unit, they're both
yes,
considered commercial lending, which has different requirements than
mhm,
primary. Primary is like, you're buying a single family home. So there's a lot of pros and cons. And it sounds like, that was a huge pro for you, is discovering the
oh yeah, it
commercial
was it
side.
was a big
Yeah.
relief.
Okay.
Because
So
my
chime in.
biggest issue
Go
at that
ahead.
time was getting loan, right? So
Yeah.
finding about the commercial loan was a major, major relief. And
Hmm.
so I started looking for fourplex, fiveplex, went into 20plex. I found a few friends that were willing to now join forces with me, a
Hmm.
co-worker and just some close family friend. So four of us. At that time, Idaho and Utah were now all of a sudden had made the turn, and they were like skyrocketing. It's funny, like a 20 unit in Salt Lake was like 80,000 per unit, right? The same 20
Hmm.
unit right now is probably 300,000 per unit, right? And you go to Ohio, you'll be selling for like 20,000, right? So
Hmm.
I first would try to look for a house in Boise, basically Idaho and Utah, couldn't find anything. Then went to Ohio, looked for deals. I found a really good deal of 52 units in Springfield, Ohio,
Hmm.
and it's selling for about 25K per unit to the 80s asset. And I remember the broker was willing to give it to us because we were the highest price. And but there were only four of us that were bringing the money. So in other words, we did not know about syndication. So
Hmm.
at that point, it's more like we join together, forces together, we buy together, and this is all we have. And the broker wanted, I think, at 100,000 or 200,000, which the number would probably have worked at that price, but we were maxed out. We did not know anybody else, so the deal fell apart. On a
Hmm.
hindsight, it's good it fell apart because now that I'm thinking about it, my underwriting at that time, yeah, I was living in Utah where you get like 10% or at least, 5% rent growth every month. It felt like that, I mean,
Yeah.
Utah, Idaho has always been over the last, 8 years has been skyrocketing in terms of rent. And my
Hmm.
assumption were like Utah assumption, we should have not been in Ohio. It's not the same rent growth and equity growth as what you'd expect in Utah. So I'm kind of glad it didn't go through. But
Hmm.
then right after that is when I found about syndication. I remember one of my friends that actually was going to join forces with me on that deal had from Michael Blank, heard about Michael Blank and listened to Michael Blank's podcast, and Michael Blank talking about syndication. So then I went,
Hmm.
downloaded, Michael Blank podcast and started listening about syndication. So that's where I learned about syndication.
Ah,
And it
okay.
was an eye opener for me. And so for the next several months, I was fully in researching, learning everything, and just trying to dig in and learn in as much as possible. And then fast
Cool.
forward, I believe almost 2 years later or a year or so later, slightly over a year later, I got my first deal in Dallas, which was a 79 unit deal. Yes.
Cool.
Well, it was that was a quite a learning lesson because it was a syndication deal. So my first syndication deal, it was about a 4 million, I believe 4.5 million, give or take somewhere there price.
Hmm.
The issue is we got on the contract, everything was smooth, was running
Yeah.
smooth. This was a 1971 asset with a
Hmm.
chiller. Well, 2 weeks before we closed, the chiller died, caught fire. The chiller literally caught fire. So,
Wait, what's a chiller?
chiller like big air conditioner that run the entire property.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Like, yes, like, and it is common in those states like Texas in the 60s and 70s, whereby they'll basically have one air conditioner that both heats and during the winter and cools the entire complex during the summer.
Okay,
So
thanks for defining that.
yeah, so the biggest challenge with that is that if it dies, which means the entire property goes down, and so you can imagine,
Yeah.
like, all of a sudden, and this was in the middle of July when
Oh
Texas was super hot,
no.
like blazing hot, and it caught fire. 2 weeks before we closed, they sell after that happened. We're like, oh, that's no problem. We were even excited about it because now the seller's gonna have to give us new chiller, right? And because insurance is gonna pay. Well, the seller was smart enough. They figured out, hey, if we walk away from this deal, then which means we don't have to pay these guys and we can sell this property for a higher price. Because the reason
Oh,
why they sell it to us at the price they did, which is a really good price, was because the chiller was on a deathbed. It was basically dying, and they wanted to get out of it as soon as possible before it dies, except that it died right before we closed.
oh my God. So the seller was kind of trying to, I don't want to
Yes,
say swindle you, but like put that on you, right?
yes, yes.
If
And
you would
and
have
we
closed
knew we
sooner.
knew we're getting in what we're getting into. We even had a capex.
Mhm.
We had a budget like what, 300K, 400K, somewhere in that range
Okay.
towards that. But it was gonna be a perfect thing for us. Like if insurance has to pay for it, then we
Right.
don't have to worry about it. Anyway, so the seller walked away. So the deal fell apart. So we had to refund all investors their money. I mean,
Right.
this thing happened literally. We're done with everything. We were basically about to close. This is 2 weeks before closing. We're just waiting for the lender to approve the loan. We raised the money. We've done everything. Just let the lender approve the loan and we can close.
And how much of a raise was that? Do you
It
remember?
was about 1.2 to 1.5, somewhere in that range, about 20%, give or take. Yes.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
exciting for your first
Yeah.
one. I mean,
I think it's
sorry that it
about
fell
1.5.
apart,
So yes,
but yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So lesson learned, lost money, but
Mhm.
it is part of what we signed up for. Part of being a general partner, there's always those risks involved.
Right.
So, but more important than anything else was that every single investor got their money back. They
Right.
completely understood what happened. A number of them ended up investing with me on more deals after that, and build stronger relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
then after that, basically bought more property and more property.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds
Yes.
like you've done a lot since then. Tell me about where your portfolio is at now.
So right now, all our portfolios in Texas and Arizona. I'm not,
Oh.
counting for the single family. I'm talking just about
Mhm.
multifamily. So Texas and Arizona, predominantly in the Houston market. We used to have a deal in Dallas. We just sold it recently, mid last year, not recently. And we have another property in Aurora, Texas, but mostly Houston market. That's our strongest market. And then, of course, we also have deals in Phoenix too.
Oh, okay. In Phoenix as
Yes.
well.
Mhm.
All right. So you like the really hot places. Got it.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me about your current challenges with where your business is at now. You scaled quite a bit as much as you could with single family. You moved
Right.
into syndications,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds like you've got a lot of assets under management. What's your
Right.
current challenge that you're facing?
So there's a number of challenges for the existing properties. Right now, I think part of the challenge that everybody's having is the unknowns. Some of my assets have a bridge loan, so we've had, interest rate go high, and thankfully we have rate cap, that we basically has kicked in, so that has brought a lot of relief. But still, like some of this, you have tens of thousands of dollars now you have to pay extra per month. And so
Right.
with everything going on the market, I believe that's the biggest challenge.
Mhm.
Staffing has always been an issue, and that it's funny. We just fired management on 3 of our properties in Houston, and that's because it's one of those scenarios whereby management that we signed up with was doing great, And then they got sold to another property management company. And when it gets sold to another property management company, we're not aligned. This other one is a big institutional property management company. And we kept hearing stories, but more importantly, the property performance started going down. And so we're like, okay, we better do something. So we had to fire. And so now we're going through the whole process of reorg of the property management companies in order for us to be able to fully execute on our business plan. But like with any other property, there's always this and that need to be done from lender side, government side, the whole thing, Insurance is definitely a big challenge every year. On all my properties, they've increased by at least 30%. I mean, it's crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Houston had a huge,
Yes.
natural disaster not long
Yes.
ago. What was that? I know that it
Oh,
got
they have
flooded.
hurricanes like every year. There's Harvey, Irma, and there's basically all kind of hurricane every year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a big challenge in terms of, definitely all of a sudden, like one of my properties, we're paying about 900 per unit in insurance. That's basically one full month rent on one property or per unit, right? Every single unit, one woman going to insurance. I mean, it is crazy.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So
knowing that when you're underwriting, which I'm sure you've come a long way in your underwriting.
Yes. And yeah,
Sorry.
luckily we assume those. So those are some things you have to kind of separate, right? Like those expenses. There's certain things you can assume maybe 2% increase every year, but insurance, usually in a market like Houston, you definitely gotta account for high insurance. Tax is also another issue in Texas, but we have a good tax protester, so that has helped us a lot in savings. But we still got to count that every year there'll always be an increase in tax just because of the way the state operate.
Right. So what are you doing? Because I'm assuming that you're still buying despite the surety in the market of where it's going. You're still buying. What are you doing differently moving forward?
So definitely putting a lot more cushion. We are definitely going to be, actually this year, whatever property we're buying, we got to be a lot more careful with what kind of lending loan we put on it. Of course, we'll always still buy a rate cap. I think right now, whatever deal I get, if I can assume the current loan, especially if a Fannie or Freddie or hard loan is much better. Definitely, if you're buying in a place like Texas, at least budget whatever the seller is paying for insurance, budget 150% of that. Because you better be safe than regret. Because once you get the property, you're stuck with it.
Yeah. There's no give backs.
There's no give back. Definitely, one thing I would also recommend is, right now with everything going on, two areas that I would highly recommend on is payroll and marketing. I tell you, good managers are in hot demand, and I've lost good managers, because I was not willing to pay them as much as I should. And if you can just budget a little extra, find a good manager and pay them. Because remember, the thing was stability, right? The more you have stability of the staff, the better, because there's always those knowledge about the property, where the problem tenants, where things are, where the problem issues. And the moment that person leaves, the new person will have to learn all over again. And when they're learning, it's going to show in the performance. You're going to see some kind of dip due to that. And so I would say for a market like Houston, of course, every market differs. So in Phoenix, going to be different underwriting. Houston, for example, I used to say like, okay, budget for 1,200. I would say right now in the Houston market, you should budget for at least 1,400.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Payroll, as an example. I used to be fine like, hey, marketing 200. Right now I would say at least 350, because those are some of the things I've learned, that you're better giving yourself a little extra because you're gonna need it, especially when you're trying to turn around. I mean, think about, you're coming in, you're cranking up the rent, you're kicking out the bad tenants, you're basically the new sheriff in town. You're gonna have to be aggressive in bringing more leads and bring more new residents in. So which means you got to budget a lot more in that space. And also, which means also therefore hiring top-notch, managers that can help you run it.
Right.
And of course, property management is very key part of that, because Some of these property management companies that are kind of like institutional based, like they used to managing on behalf of institution or family office,
Mm,
they're not with us. We're basically flipping the property because we're holding it
right.
2 to 3 years. 5 years
Yeah.
holding project holding fee, but the project is 2 to 3 years, which means
Right.
you gotta get a property manager who's in line with you, who
Yeah.
knows your goal. And I
Maybe
would say
more
some of
aggressive.
this, yes, yes,
Yeah.
and it's very important to understand how they operate, what's their background, what their history, what type of property
Mhm.
they typically own, and how long typically most of their owners hold the property. I remember we were interviewing a property manager, and they were like, we can only have a meeting once per month. I'm like, no, all my property, I must have weekly meeting because I need to know literally every single week where we're in occupancy, we're in delinquency,
Mhm.
the make readies, the capex we got going on. Because I have a short time, I have a 2 year window. I don't have like a 10-year window to do this.
Yeah.
And so having somebody who knows how syndication work and how syndicators operate, I think is very, very key.
That's a really good
Yeah.
tip on a couple tips there. So, on that note, with those tips of what you're looking for or how you screen property managers,
Mhm.
what's the criteria that you look for when interviewing or researching property managers for your big apartment buildings?
Yes. So there are certain things that I think are very important. How many units they own, do they manage in their portfolio, right? Like if they manage like 500 units, you don't want to be all of a sudden you give them and you make like 80% of the entire portfolio, right? I personally think they should own at least 4,000 units,
Okay.
whereby, because one of the key things is the back office support, right? You
Mhm.
want an accountant that you can reach out to anytime and will be able to provide the financial reports on time and all the lender requirement, draw requests, and all those stuff. And if it's too small, you might not get that full back office, like the marketing. Like you won't have a dedicated person to you, but you can have a marketing team that can help you with like website redesign, signing up contract with the apartment.com and all those places, coming up with a marketing package for your property. So having that back office is extremely critical, and they have to have a minimum number of units for them to afford that kind of resource, right? So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Where the basin, I think, is very key. And if the presence is that market, right? Because
Mhm.
could have a property manager you really like that's based out of, say, Denver, Colorado, but you are trying to buy a property in Dallas. If they don't have anything in Dallas, no matter how good they are, you don't want a scenario but like every time your regional, want to go to the property, they have to fly in, because they don't have presence in that market. So I think having a presence in the market is very, very key. But
Mhm.
also, it's not just also a presence, but a good presence. Like, for example, actually, the major metro, you want like, oh yeah, they have one property in Dallas. To me, that's not enough. They have to have a good whereby there's a local infrastructure to support you because they're gonna need each other. It's quite common for like a property manager to be sick, right? Or what happens if the leasing agent is sick and property manager is sick? You don't want to be like, okay, all of a sudden the office is closed because there's
Right.
no somebody floating original who can come to the property to keep the doors open. Right. I tend to look into ask them about project management, actually, if I'm going to have a lot of projects, because some property
Mhm.
management company are good at ripping people off. Actually, if they say they have in-house management, I'm usually not a fan of that
Yeah.
because I like to bid out the projects. And so that's very key. I always want to know what software do they use and will they allow us access to the software? Like if they're using Resman or Appfolio or,
Mhm.
and Trida, whatever software they're using, will we be able to access that? Because I want like on a Sunday, at 10 p.m., I'm trying to figure out where do we stand in occupancy as of today or get the latest rent roll. I don't have to send an email to get that. I should be able to just log in,
Right.
download the information. Yeah, I want to know about the reports that they provide every month. What kind of
Mhm.
details is included on that. I definitely want to know about their marketing team, the plan, the marketing staff, and all that stuff, because I think that's very, very key. Some people put a lot of emphasis on management fee. To me, I don't consider that super high because if somebody can execute really, really well,
Yeah.
then they're probably
Worth
worth
it.
it. But for the
Yeah.
most part, they got to show that they can deliver before you can reward them a little extra, right?
Yeah. Make
So
them really work for it.
yes, and I like to know, like, kind of like an idea of people that currently they manage their property for. Do they manage mostly for institution, for mom and pop? Do they manage mostly for like family office who are going to hold the property for 20 years? I'm very interested in somebody who's a good chunk of their portfolio is syndicated deals. Because syndicated
Right.
deals is basically a flip, so there's a lot more aggressiveness in terms of how the syndicate want the project to be run.
Right.
Of course, like I indicated earlier, meeting every week is extremely critical for me. I've had a scenario whereby I'm talking to property manager and they're like, hey, you're not allowed to visit the property unless you notify in 48 hours and you're not allowed to talk to property manager. I'm like, no, I need to be able to visit the property anytime I want and we will talk to the property manager at any time. Of course, it's always
Yeah.
good to give heads up. And I
Mhm.
live in Boise, so one thing I never want to do is like I'm going to Houston and show up at the property and nobody's there. So sometimes I like to give that heads up, but I want to have the flexibility that, hey, if I smell something funny, I should be able to
Mhm.
go to the property at any time and talk to the on-site managers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
makes a lot of sense.
it's several things you have to do, and in knowing how they operate, making sure that they fully understand, your vision, your goals. I think is very important.
Are there a lot of property managers? We keep using the example of Dallas, but for any metro area, like how many property managers are there that manage this size of buildings, right? This many units. I would imagine there would only be like a handful, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, there's so many. There's so
So
many.
many. Oh,
So
okay.
so many. Yeah, there's a
That's good.
ton,
Look,
a ton.
competition. That's good.
Yes,
We want
yes,
a
a
lot.
ton.
Yeah.
The challenge is which of those are kind of like aligned with you as a syndicator. That's the question,
Right.
because some of those, like there's this property management company in Houston, based in Houston. They've been in the business for 15 years
Hmm.
and they have about 3,000 units. To me, that's an indication they're not doing something right. If you've been in the business for 15 years and you have 3,000 units, which
Right.
means, they're not good at running their business, because otherwise they're not growing. They should show that they're growing. I know property management company that started the last couple of years or 3 years and they're already owning like 10,000 units, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I think knowing a property that's kind of like aligned with the whose goals are aligned with the syndicators, I think is very, very key.
Yes, that's really
Yep.
interesting to dive deep into that. Thanks for that
Mm.
long short list
Yes.
of things to look for. Cool. So tell me now, Jack, what would your advice to a beginner be? Somebody who's just wanting to get into real estate?
Oh, so definitely got to spend a lot more on your education. I think it
Mhm.
is extremely important to spend as much time on education. One of the good things that thanks to internet, there's a lot of resources you can get for free to learn, right? When I was trying to learn by myself, the moment I knew about syndication, I was all over the internet, researching everything. And there's all kind of everything there. You just gotta filter out through the noise. But basically,
Yeah.
there's some good, reputable, places you can go and learn everything. I always recommend joining a group like Warriors, like the one you're part of. I think
Mhm.
that kind of help speed up your learning process. But to me, more important than even the learning process is the networking, the instant access to the
Right.
people around you that you can call anytime, because you can learn all you want, but it's like having a baby, right? You can read everything, but the moment they come up, they show up, whatever you learn on the books is now you gotta figure it
Yeah.
out now. And so you want to be able to be in a position whereby you can call somebody, like say, okay, so what do I do here? I think is very good. It's very important to be surrounded, be in in an environment where you're surrounded with the right people that are pursuing the same goal as you. So that
Right.
would be my recommendation. Learn as much as you can, but also find a good, reliable group like the Warriors that you can join. I'm not part of the Warriors, just for the record. So it's
Oh,
not
you're
like
not. You're a part of the network. You know what I mean? Like you know people and
yes,
you're also, doing syndications.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
And what is really good when you're getting started, right? But with me, I'm no longer getting started. So
Right,
I'm
right,
I'm at a
right.
different level at this point, so to speak. But
Yeah.
if you're getting started, you definitely be in that kind of place where you can be surrounded by the right people that can help
Yes.
not only help educate you, but also provide you with the opportunities, right? Because, I remember like, I was attending a conference in was it Dallas or Houston? Either Dallas or Houston. And I was talking to this lady and her and husband, right? And we chatting, grab a wine, we're talking, we chatted till midnight, and fast forward 2 weeks later, a broker called me. As a matter of fact, I was out with the family on a vacation. The broker called me for a deal in Amarillo. And I'm like, this is a really good deal. It's one of those deals that stood out. I'm like, holy smoke, this is a really good deal. And the deal just fell apart from another buyer. So they were trying to find somebody else to get it. And when he called me, I had to figure out who lived close to Amarillo. Well, it turned out this lady that I was hanging out with her and husband were like 4 hours away. So I called her the next day, like, hey, go check it out. She went check it out. It was a good deal. We got it.
Amazing.
And so when you're in those kind of environment where you get surrounded with people, especially in the market you're trying to be in, thanks to multifamily of this size, you don't have to buy it in your neighborhood, right? You buy it nationally. I mean, I live in Boise, but I mostly buy in Texas and Arizona, right? So I want to be in a position whereby if a broker called me tonight, I was saying like, hey, there's a deal in Houston. I have somebody in Houston that I can call the next day to go and take a look at the property for me, because I don't want to go to Houston for every single lead. Like every time there's a lead, I go to Houston. It's just going to be too expensive.
Right. It's not going to make sense. So I think that's a really great point. And that's pretty much why I joined the group as well is, I did a bunch of research on syndications on my own. I read lots of books. I listened to lots of podcasts. I did webinars or I attended webinars, right? And I felt real ready. So I was going to start with, a smaller commercial on my own. So I sent out mailers. I got a really good response rate on those, right?
Nice.
The minute that they sent me, all of the documents for underwriting, right, which I'd studied, I felt like I was pro. I totally froze, and there wasn't anybody for me to call to help me through it, right? I'd refer back to the books, but ultimately I pretty much ghosted people and just didn't reply because I was so excited and then just hit the wall of like fear because I didn't know what I was doing or looking at the time, right? So, surrounding myself with people who are better than me at these things, but also in line with what I'm wanting to be learning and, 2 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps ahead of me. It was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth it because I don't have that problem today, obviously. So I completely agree. I think that's some really great advice. And on the note of education, what are some books that you recommend, whether related to investing or mindset or anything that you would want to recommend?
Yeah, so I would recommend, there's a number of books, but my top recommendation really for those who are getting started, I still think ABC, Ken McElroy, ABC
ABCs of real estate investing?
Yes, yes, that one. I read it years ago. It was back when I was getting started, I think it was quite an eye opener for me. From a mindset point of view, I highly recommend Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I just think that's a really, really good book in terms of getting you, in the right mind, to get in the business. Lately, there's been a lot of podcasts, that, listen to a lot, because it's not just the book also, but also listening podcasts, right? And of course, Rod Cliff is always a great podcast to listen to. Actually, that's that like 5-minute mindset kind of like, episodes, I think those are really, really nice, episode. There's Old Capital. That's another great one. Old Capital podcast is a great one. I also like to listen to non-real estate or just business, general business like NPR Marketplace. I like that because I just want to know what's going on in the market today.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're not an island, right? We got to know what's going on in the market. What's the inflation today? Like you're not going to hear much about, every time from Rod Cliff on daily update on inflation, but you got to go somewhere to find what's the daily update on inflation. And so NPR Marketplace, I find it's a great 30-minute show just to hear what's going on in the marketplace and get to know. And there's also another really good website, Tom Wheelwright, or other podcast, Tom Wheelwright. You probably know Tom Wheelwright from Tax Strategy. I think that's a really great podcast to listen to. There's also used to be called Refresh Your Wealth. Now it's Main Street Business podcast. Also, they talk about tax
Mm.
and IRA investing. So those are some of the great podcasts I would highly, highly recommend somebody to listen to.
That's a great group. I try to jot down notes here so we can provide links to those in the show notes. If you're listening
Yes.
and you want to take a
Hmm.
look at those, you can hop on over there as well as the links to the books. So
Yes.
now I would love to hear a little bit of a brag. What are you especially proud of?
Well, definitely family. I have a 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 11-year-old. So they definitely keep me super busy. I love, believe it or not, a lot of people ask me like, hey, you're in Texas all the time, but why don't you just move to Texas? Because every time I see you, I see you in Texas. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I think I enjoy Boise more. It has become expensive from real estate point of view, but everything else still better. I'm a big fan of small town. I love to ski, so it's kind of work handy like that.
Yeah.
Very outdoorsy. So to me, family and outdoor lifestyle is kind of like my thing. Super happy. If I can do that all day, I'll do that all day. And now working from home, thankfully I retired from my corporate job. So the flexibility of working from home, spending time with the kids in the morning, getting them ready for school and just simple things in life.
Yeah, that's really
Yes.
special. That's really cool that you get to do that. You've
Yes.
achieved this early enough in their lives that you
Hmm.
can make that impact, which is really powerful,
Oh,
right?
yes.
That's really cool. I would be proud of that too. That being said, where are you going next?
So I have a bunch of conferences that are coming up. So, but vacation wise, I'm going to Kenya in, when is it? About 3 weeks from now, from 3 weeks from today. So I'm looking forward for vacation wise for that. I was in Dominican Republic last month, as in December, early December. It was fun, it was nice, enjoying the breeze and while working at the same time.
That's cool.
All I need is just internet and my laptop,
Right.
and I'm good to go. And yeah, so from vacation wise, yes, that's pretty much my
Yeah.
next.
Sounds
Yes.
sounds like you're enjoying a bit of geographic freedom,
Oh,
right?
no doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt.
I mean, it sounds like the kids are still in school.
Yes,
So
yes,
there's that
so
tying you there, but you pretty much can go wherever you want, and sounds like you are. So that's really cool.
oh, no doubt, no doubt. And like where we live is very family friendly. The school is very close to my home. Like, because with my work, I tend to travel a lot for conferences. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, next week I'll be at NMHC conference
Yes.
in Vegas. And
Mhm.
then right after that, there's a conference in Miami I'm going to.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
after
really
that,
quick,
I'm going
because
to.
I wanna pause you for a second.
Mhm.
And what was the NMHC?
Yeah,
The
NMHC.
Yeah, I had Googled it. That's why I know what you're talking about, because people kept talking about it, but nobody would spell it out. And so there are some people that will just, put on forums and stuff like, what are you talking about? Whereas I'm
Yes.
like Googling, I'm like, oh, this is what it is. But now I forgot. What was it?
National Multifamily Housing Council. So that's the main industry group for multifamily, right?
Yeah.
And is the leading industry group in our space, and anybody in our space. It's really, once you get to a certain level, it's kind
Yeah.
of part of what you want to do. One thing I love about the conference more than anything else is one place I can go meet all the brokers that I want to meet with without necessarily traveling to everywhere they are. Like
Mhm.
this year, my goal, I really, really want to get something in Florida. Talk about being obsessed. There you go.
There
I'm
you go.
obsessed with trying to get something in Florida. I really, really want to get something in Florida this year, so bad.
Yeah.
And going to this conference, I know all, not all, but there's certain key brokers all over the state that I've been wanting to meet with. And this is going to be one place I can meet with all of them in a day or two without necessarily, driving all
Mhm.
over the state and trying to meet them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course, I got my usual brokers out of Texas that I try to keep close contact with. It's going to be
Mhm.
nice to reconnect with them and meet with them. So the key actually, it's like a broker's heaven. You want to meet all the brokers, they're going to be there. I got some Utah brokers that I've always wanted to meet with. They're going to be there. Going to reconnect with them. Some Phoenix brokers. So it's going to be a nice place to reconnect with those, key people that I really need for my next deal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. And so now I would like to shift a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and tell us a fun fact about you, Jack, that maybe people don't know or wouldn't know right off the bat.
Oh, fun fact about me that many people do not know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know I mentioned it early, but I love to ski, and many people, that's one thing a lot of people do not know unless they know me. And of course, I mostly ski here in Boise. So, unless you're
All right.
local, yes. But also, unless I love to cook, unless you know me personally or been to Boise, I'm a foodie, so I love
Okay.
to cook anything, so it's one of my passions.
Do you have a signature dish?
So, well, I have some, I would say, Kenyan dish that I do make.
Uh-huh. Are you being
I wouldn't
modest?
call myself signature, like that. I just know that one thing I cook, I don't like to follow recipe.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not good at following recipe. Like, hey, put 2 tablespoons of salt or 3 tablespoons of this. To me, it's all about the chemistry. So whenever
Okay.
I cook, and you know, people for the most part love it because I love to entertain. And a lot of people like,
Yeah.
come to my house for dinner, whatever it is. And
Okay. If I'm in
yeah,
Boise, I'm making note. I'm stopping by. And it's
anytime,
funny.
anytime.
It's funny that you say that because I think about this. So I cook dinner for my family like just about every night. I'm responsible for dinners right now.
Hmm.
But if somebody was to ask me if I was a good cook, I don't
Hmm.
necessarily feel like I could say yes because I'm
Yes.
good at following recipes.
Oh,
And
really? I'm
so
the
it
other way.
doesn't, it's the opposite, right? It's like I can follow a recipe and cook, right?
Hmm.
Does that make me a good cook or just a good recipe follower? It doesn't feel like it comes out of me naturally. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't
Yes.
say like I cook, but I wouldn't consider myself a cook.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree. I would also say the same. Like, to me, is the passion of the cooking.
Mhm.
It's like they always say, like that saying, like, hey, it's all a matter of the love you love into that food. Like what kind of
Mm.
love you put into the food that
Mhm.
makes the difference. And one thing, like for example, I would sometimes see an idea, like okay, somebody tell me, okay, this is how it's done, and I would start following the recipe. But then
Mhm.
before I realize quickly, I'm starting to, you know,
Deviate.
like, yeah, I think you need a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, before I
I
realize
yeah,
it's my
I
own
think
special,
a,
yeah.
a few things come to mind. You'd really trust yourself with the creativity of that. And I love that, the passion that you put
Yeah.
into it, right? I think I put just enough passion not to poison my family. I'm pretty sure.
That's so you're like my wife. It's cooking is not her thing,
Yeah.
and with that, I think it's the funny thing with that. If she can just go buy the pre-made,
Yeah.
she'll be happy. But with me, the idea of cooking it from scratch felt really
Mhm.
good. The idea of
Mhm.
cutting the onions and cutting the tomatoes and just that.
I love that. So cool. Thanks
Mhm.
for sharing that with me. It sounds like we kind of already know what's next for you, right? Florida.
There you
You're going
go.
to buy something in Florida. We're putting it out to the universe.
Yes,
Is,
yes.
is there anything else on the horizon for you?
So right now, yeah, 2023 goal. It's funny. This was a 2022 goal that got postponed 2023 because last year, believe it or not, I think between January and like April, I was like going for like, I think between January, I'd already gone like 6 times already, and I had offers all over the place. Of course, then the market blew, and
Mhm.
I had to put everything on hold. But I'm just hoping with the Fed meeting in a couple of weeks, there could be some sense of calm. Because what's holding me back, to be honest with you right now, is the unknown in the lending market. Because
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how good of a deal you have, the lending market, makes things very, very challenging, you know.
Yeah.
And so in the horizon, back to your question, what do you have in the horizon? I want, and that's I love Texas. Texas is my bread and butter in terms of market, but I want to diversify. I used to focus on Texas and Arizona, but Arizona just quickly becoming way more expensive and hard to get the numbers to pencil.
Mhm.
But one thing I like about Florida is also the number of leads you get. In Arizona you get Phoenix, right, and Tucson,
Right.
and that's it. In Florida, you get Tampa, you get Orlando, you get Jacksonville, you get Daytona, you get Miami, you get all over the place. So like every single day, I'm getting several leads
Yeah.
in that state that could be a potential.
Yeah, there's a lot of major cities in Florida, and I always
Yes.
laugh because I go to these conferences and people say that they're from Florida, and I ask them, "Oh, where in Florida?" Like as if I have any idea where these cities are because I'm so unfamiliar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know the majors, Miami, Orlando,
Hmm.
right? Tampa, we're Sarasota. There, I know of them, but could I, pinpoint which side they're on? No. I'm
Right.
like, what was the point of me even asking? I need to look at a map before I talk to somebody next. How embarrassing.
That's funny.
So, but yes, there are a lot of major metro areas in Florida.
Hmm.
Florida's a really great market,
Yes.
great weather also. So I can see definitely the draw. So
Hmm.
how could our listeners and watchers get in touch with you, Jack? Maybe hear about upcoming deals or just learn more from you?
I'm always available to jump on a call with anybody who's interested. Like I indicated, I love talking about real estate, anything and everything about real estate. And so the best way is always through my website, so kindubayproperties.com, same as the name of the company. So just go, you can Google it or
Yeah, and
whatever it
that's
is, kindubayproperties.com.
KENDU
DUBAY
properties.com.
property. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So you go there, there's a link where you can link to schedule a meeting with me, or you can email me directly, jack@kindubayproperties.com. Same thing, you reach out to me and usually I'm available. So if you go to the website, my phone number, email, and everything is there. And, I'd be glad to jump on a quick call and talk about anything. And if you
Cool.
have a deal in Florida, let me know. I'm only looking for assets that are built in 2000 or new. That's a key
Okay.
requirement, and at least 100 units or more in any major metro in Florida. So if you live in
Okay.
Florida, or if you happen to know a deal in Florida, off-market deal, because right now any broker in tech in Florida, I'm on their mailing list. So so
You're connected.
if I'm connected, that's how to get the leads, right?
Right,
Yes.
right. Yeah.
But also the same thing in Texas. I mean, I'm looking for deals in Texas. Those are my primary focus. Those two market. But if you also have a deal in Arizona or Georgia or Utah or Idaho, please let me know.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
You gave the listeners quite a great list of homework. So if anybody has anything, reach out to Jack or have any, questions or just want to talk about real estate because
Yes.
you are super sweet and available. And I'm so happy that our paths have crossed.
Awesome.
Yeah. It sounds like you go to a lot of events. You're going to have a really great year. I know it. I'm so excited to watch
Thank
you
you.
in this journey. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Jack. And we will keep in touch. Thank you.
definitely. Thank you.
Well, that is it for our interview with Jack Aduwo with Kendu Bay Properties. It was a little bit deeper dive of a show, in my opinion, with some of the terminology he was using. If you have any questions or would like more information on syndications, head over to my website, clearconnectioncapital.com, where you can sign up to hear our upcoming offerings and see if syndication and investing in that is right for you. If you did enjoy the episode, please leave a 5-star review, like, subscribe, all the good stuff on whatever platform you're watching this or listening to this on, as well as head over to the show's website if you'd like, where I have a list of all of the book recommendations, and you can send me a note saying you want to be on the show or you have some feedback. I'd love it. You could always connect with me also on Instagram. My handle is AlanaGeorge_real estate. So thanks again for watching the Obsessed with Real Estate show. I will see you on the next episode.